Hello and welcome to everybody, and thank you for joining me today for another Victoria 3 video. So the date is currently the 24th of June and it's a Thursday, so we all know what that means. And it means it's Dev Diary Day, and I have been looking forward to this one all goddamn week. So I got home, kind of kept refreshing the page in order to see if the Dev Diary came out. And of course, the excitement is just always there. And I'm getting more and more excited as I'm going through these dev diaries, because I've never played Vicky before, and kind of reading through this and learning like all the different kind of core aspects of the gameplay by reading through these dev diaries, it just makes it that more interesting. But anyway, what is today's topic? Well, today's topic is production methods, and it's something I've been super intrigued to read about because, again, I have no experience with Vicky 2, so I have no experience with any type of production or anything, so I really don't know what to expect. And they were talking about production methods briefly in the previous dev diary, and you had some screenshots detailing production methods and stuff, but I had absolutely no idea what it is. So let's dive right into this, and it's a big and juicy one today. It's very long, very big, very meaty, but it's good, and I really can't wait to get into this. So let's dive. So, hello again and happy Thursday. Today we'll be taking a deeper look inside buildings to explore production methods. These determine the functions of the building, its inputs and outputs, and what employee types it requires to operate. Okay, so production method just determines what the building does, how much it kind of produces and what it needs to have to produce things, and also what type of pots are required to operate the buildings. Simple enough so far. Many management games let you upgrade a building to increase its efficiency or expand its functionality. In these games, after the upgrade investment has been paid, the impact is permanent and nearly always superior in every way to the building's previous functionality. That's fairly true. General games like this, you kind of click on upgrade for a building, and you're only really ever presented with bonuses like increase in quantity of production, increase in the production speed, and a load of other stuff, and you don't really have many negative modifiers or negative aspects like a trade-off where you have a good thing for a bad thing. But in Victoria 3, there are no actions without reactions, and novel innovations don't just make buildings better with no side effects, and I'm liking the sound of this because I do like the kind of aspect of like you kind of have a bonus but you have to deal with the downside of having this bonus, and it does make sense and it makes kind of choices more impactful, and you've got to kind of think about what you want to do instead of just clicking or spamming the upgrade button, and I like the sound of that. Improving the industrial processes over time is to be expected, but in some cases those improvements might require goods as input that the country has scant access to, while others permit the output of a new type of end product at the expense of the old one. So of course, you may have a production method that you're gonna have, but you're not going to have the resource in order to get what you want, and you might not produce it yourself, so you might have to import it from somewhere else in order to make the said good, which does sound cool. And of course, if you change the production method, it said by the looks of it, a new type of product could be made at the expense of the old one. So I don't know, I'm just going to go for a random example, like munitions factory, I don't know, saying you're producing a specific type of munition. Of course, if you change the kind of production method to a different munition type, then you're not going to be producing the old munition type. Again, I don't know if this is going to be in the game, but it's just kind of the way I see things and how I kind of get grasp of the actual subject. As a result, buildings in Victoria 3 require more flexible upgrade paths than what's afforded by permanent linear no-brainer improvements. This first paragraph's good. I like it. I just like having a kind of a trade-off where you have positive, negative, and not where you have everything kind of positive. I think that's a cool thing, and it's something that's needed instead of spamming upgrades and just getting a load of cool bonuses. All buildings have several categories of production methods, usually between 2 and 5. Only one is active at any given time in each category. Most categories fall into one of these types. So we have a couple of types down here, but the way I read this here, when all AI buildings have several categories of production methods between 2 and 5, my guess with this is that each building type or each buildings have 2 to 5 overall global categories. And then within these categories, you have a different kind of set of production methods, and you can only have one active at each category at any time. And that's the way I'm reading things here. Again, I could be totally wrong, but it's just the way I see this from reading this as a complete Vicky newbie. So you have these categories of production methods. So you've got base ones apparently. So base governs the general tech level and efficiency of the building, produces goods typical for the building type. So this is going to be a base kind of global production method. I'm saying, for example, I don't know, wheat farm, produce wheat. And that's going to be it. I mean, that's the base product of that building. I mean, I'm guessing. That's how I read it anyway. Then you have refining, reduces the output of typical goods in favour of output of a specialised or luxury goods. sometimes adding a special input. Okay, so I don't know, let's say you have a base good. Like, again, I'm going to go for the wheat example, is how I'm seeing it. So you have wheat. If you want to choose refining, maybe you can refine this wheat to make another good, maybe flour. I don't know, but at the cost of reducing the amount of overall wheat you produce, because of course some of it is going to go into the refining process to make flour, and then of course to make bread. I mean, that's how I read things, and it does make kind of sense. I think. I think it makes sense. We have automation. Sorry, what did I say? Automaton. That's Frostpunk. No, automation. Adds industrial goods as input to reduce the building's unskilled workforce requirement. So this is, of course, ties into with the whole industrialization process where you've got steam-powered engines and everything powering the factories. For example, the weaving machines in the textile mills. So I'm guessing that this production method, automatons, you can probably choose a type of machines you want in there. And of course, it would increase your output of a specific item or good or product, whatever, and reduce the amount of buildings' unskilled workforce requirement. So, of course, if you don't have these machines, you're going to have unskilled labourers working in your factories. If you want to have the machines in there to increase your efficiency, well, you're going to have people qualified to work the damn things, and that makes sense. And then ownership determines who owns shares in the building, typically governed by laws. Now, I'm interested to see how this is a category of production method ownership. Maybe depending on what type of category of POPs own the building, depends on kind of condition changes to the production. I have no idea. Well, that's an interesting one, ownership. And I want to see how that ties in. But I think we're going to have an example next down here anyway. So with the right technologies, food industries can make groceries from both grain, bakeries, and fish, canneries. Okay, they can also refine sugar into liquor, distilleries. With advanced technologies, food industries can be partially automated, drastically reducing the need for unskilled labour. Simple food industries are operated by merchant guilds, shopkeepers, while more advanced and profitable food industries are owned by capitalists who reinvest some of their dividends. Okay, it's actually quite a good example here throughout this whole text because it kind of goes through the whole of these different categories of kind of production methods. So with the right technologies, food industries can make groceries from both grain and bakeries, so bakeries, and fish from canneries. So I'm guessing you're going to have like a base good from these food industries, of course, which is going to be the groceries that you get from the grain and the fish, and it kind of makes the base food good, I suppose. And then you can also refine these goods. So you can refine, for example, grain and sugar into liquor in distilleries. So that's like an example of a refining process. But then I think it's going to be at the cost of reduced base output, so reduced kind of goods for your groceries, I suspect. And food industries can be partially automated, drastically reducing the need for unskilled labour. Of course, there's the automation kind of production methods. And one can be active at each time in each category, from what I understand. And it reduces the amount of the unskilled workforce. And then, of course, these simple food industries are operated by merchant guilds, shopkeepers, with more advanced and profitable food industries owned by capitalists who reinvest some of their dividends. So maybe simple food industries like the groceries, for example, are going to be sold by the shopkeepers, but then, of course, the distilleries, where you're going to be refining these different kind of base food goods into liquor and stuff, is going to be owned by capitalists who have the capital and the know-how in order to produce these things. So that sounds super interesting. We've got here a little work-in-progress screenshot. So we've got food industries in Champagne, which is France, by the way. It's not champagne you drink, but the region of Champagne in northeastern France, or centre-northeasty side of France. It's basically east of Paris. And what do we have here? So we've got a load of different production methods here. So here we've got the kind of grocery. I'm guessing this is like the base kind of grocery thing here. Or no, that's the base bread, or the base kind of thing or kind of resource. Then you've got the groceries. I'm guessing this is groceries or canned food. So you're like turning the base food into canned food. And then you've got distilleries. So that's the distillery icon, which is interesting. This has got to be automated labour, yes or no. I'm guessing this is barred out, so no automated labour. And this is the type of people that own the building, I'm guessing. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's the merchants. Maybe it's the capitalist. I really don't know. As one example, we have a more detailed example here by the looks of it. So, as one example, an iron mine-based production method determines if miners use only picks or shovels, or if they use some sort of engine-driven pumping mechanism. Okay, so like we have one category, so for like an iron mine-based production, which ties up with the base production here. So we can determine if it uses only picks and shovels, which of course is going to be using unskilled workforce, or if you can use some sort of engine-driven pumping mechanism, and that's going to be that. I mean, you're going to probably have to have a more qualified POP category or POP type in order to use them. There are several different pumping technologies which also determine which fuel is used. Wow, so it kind of really dives deep into the different, I mean, like the subcategories by the looks of it. So the different pumping technologies determine which fuel is used. So I'm guessing you can use coal. Of course, that's going to be one of the main things. Then maybe oil. I don't know. The more advanced the pumping mechanism, the more deposits can be accessed with, and the faster the iron can be mined. So that actually makes sense. But the more coal or oil is used in the process, also like coal and oil is the kind of type of fuel that used is in the process. So, of course, the better the pumping mechanism or the more advanced the pumping mechanism, the more fuel you're going to be needing to use. But then the counterbalance is, of course, that you're going to get more out of your mines. Now, I'm thinking here you're going to have to pay attention that if you have, or do you have enough fuel in order to run these machines who are going to have increased fuel consumption due to the fact that they're better machines. So you're going to have to kind of balance it out by the looks of things. With higher tech pumps comes a requirement for more engineers and machinists to be on site to control and oversee the operations. So more skilled workers instead of unskilled workforce. And then, of course, these unskilled labourers, you're going to have to place them somewhere else. I mean, they're not going to be working in the mine anymore. You're going to have to kind of give them jobs somewhere else. So that's something you're going to have to take into account. Of course, you automate your mine and stuff, but you need more qualified workers, which are taking the jobs of the unqualified workers. And, of course, they need to have jobs in order to pay and sustain themselves. So it's kind of an interesting balance. This creates more demand for qualified workers and also opens up a number of better paid positions to those POPs who meet the qualifications. And of course, these POPs who meet these qualifications are better paid, and of course, better spending power, drive the economy, blah, 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 blah. All nice stuff. The revolution in chemical sciences of the era also enabled the use of explosives in mining, which is a secondary production method category used only in mines. So looks like we've got the first production method, which is the base production method, which if we use picture shovels or machines. And then you have a second second production method, which is chemical sciences. So that's going to be another different type of production methods in the mining. And this is using nitroglycerin once it's invented. That's basically dynamite. That's interesting. It can be used in mines to generate even more minerals. So you can by the looks of it, you can stack it with the first production method, which is cool. And so it gives you access to more minerals at the expense of explosives produced by the chemical industry, but also with a higher rate of workplace accidents. So, of course, so the chemical industry that's going to be producing explosives. So you're going to be taking explosives out of the chemical industry to put them into the mines. So the output of the chemical industries in terms of dynamite is going to be less because, of course, some of it's going to go into the mines. But it also says you have a higher rate of workplace accidents. Of course, nitroglycerin is highly volatile. One false move and you blow up. I mean, the scene I've got in my mind here is the Lost. In Lost, I think it's the first season or second one, where you got the school teacher or the science teacher who goes to pick up dynamite and it blows himself up. I like Lost. I really binge Lost like crazy. So that's interesting. By researching less volatile dynamite, even more minerals are extracted at the expense of even more explosives, with the additional benefit that far fewer workers will blow themselves up on the job. Yay, this is all sounding very nice. Once invented, portable steam donkey engines can be developed at mining or deployed at mining site to drastically reduce the amount of manual labour required for hauling. So, looks like you've got to kind of extract the minerals and then you've got to haul them. So, I mean, if people are hauling them by pushing carts or hauling them out in bags or whatever, it's going to be a lot longer, and you can actually automate this. So it looks like you can pretty much automate a hell of a lot of stuff. Of course, these steam donkeys are going to be hauling them along kind of tracks and hauling it at a quicker rate. And of course, again, this means that we're not going to be using, or you're not going to be using unqualified workers for doing that job. It's going to be machine driven. So of course, these guys are going to be out of a job and they're going to need to have another place to work. But anyway, where was I? I was here. So this cost of building some money in the form of coal and engines, but reduces the amount of money you have to pay in wages. Well, of course, you have to, kind of the engines or the machines, you're going to have to use coal and to feed these engines. You're going to have to produce the engines with the coal to fuel them, but it reduces the amount of money you have to pay in wages because it's not people that you're going to have less people hauling. Of course, you're going to have the machinists who are going to oversee the machines, but overall, you're going to be getting rid of a load of unqualified workers that you're not going to have to pay because the steam donkey does the job for you, which is interesting. So perhaps more importantly, it frees those labourers up to do work in other buildings if the state is running low on workers. That's what I was saying. So that's cool. So basically, let's say you're having a worker shortage somewhere, and you don't have enough unqualified labour in order to do the kind of tedious and menial jobs. Then I suppose you could automate a certain sector and pull these unqualified pops out and put them into another sector, which is good. Oh, I love economic management. It is. I wasn't hyped for the game that much before the dev dies because honestly, I never played Vicky before, and I do kind of like to keep a level head. But I'm slowly getting hyped. I really am slowly getting hyped. But if wages are already very depressed, it might not be a great idea to purchase expensive industrial goods just to increase the unqualified labour pool further. So this might not be a no-brainer decision for people to make. Again, it's all determining the pros and cons of the choices you're going to have to make into doing a certain action with increasing or doing different production methods, which I like. It's not a one-click and gain a bonus and just a bonus. You have to kind of pay attention to different kind of side effects that you can potentially have, and that is good. In most countries, simple mines are owned and operated by merchant guilds at game start. These are small-time purveyors of the goods produced and represented by shopkeepers. Okay, so you start off the game by the looks of it that if you remember from the very, very first when they kind of revealed the game at PDXCon and got with the different kind of panels and stuff, they did say that most of the game you would start, or most of areas in the game starts off as a subsistence economy and not an industrialized one. And it seems that most kind of buildings or most stuff are operated by merchant guilds at the start, and the small-time purveyors of the goods produced and they're represented by shopkeepers, who basically own these small industrial elements. And once mines start to industrialize, so this is just an example, so once mines or your overall kind of infrastructure and industry start to industrialize, capitalists step in to take ownership. So of course, as industrialization process goes on, because in order to enact industrialization, you're going to need to have people with capital and capital to invest in the machines and the industrialization process, and these capitalists are the ones to do this. So looks like capitalists are going to be able to step in over time and take ownership from the merchants, because the merchants don't have enough wealth in order to enact the industrialization process. Or maybe even merchants will slowly over time gather enough wealth from their small enterprise and then become capitalists in their own right, which is cool. In most cases, these capitalists will come with... it says here. So in most cases, capitalists will come from shopkeepers, promoted to these newly created positions, but some might come from other pops in the state, even other capitalists in buildings not quite as lucrative as these new mines. So yeah, so looks like most of them will come from shopkeepers who will amass enough wealth and over time then, of course, become these capitalists who will privately drive this industrialization process. And it does say that they may come from other pops in the state. So I don't know, let's say in a certain state, the merchants don't have enough capital, then maybe a capitalist will step in and kind of buy out the kind of mine, for example, and then start their industrialization process, which is interesting. So where was I? Here I was here. So there are fewer capitalists than shopkeepers, but they draw a higher wage, and more importantly, they will reinvest some of their earnings into the country's expanding industry, depending on how much profit their workplace is generating for them. So again, that's pretty cool. So they're going to be driving, of course, pops, again, it's another example of pop being the driving force of your economy. They make money, they invest the money somewhere else, and blah, 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 and the cycle goes on. I like this. As new ideas spread across your society, you may be able to make the mining industry publicly traded instead of privately held. And later on, the game, and perhaps even nationalising them to be run by government bureaucrats, will turn them into cooperatives where profit is split between workers. And this is the thing that excites me the most here. It really does. You can change the status of your industry. If you want it to be publicly owned, which is going to be owned by the government, then that's fine. If you want it to be privately held by private capitalist ventures, then you can do that as well. Or you can nationalise them to be run by the government bureaucrats, or turn them into communist kind of cooperatives and stuff. The possibility is endless, and you can do so many cool things. If I wanted to make a crazy mining socialist utopia where all the mines are owned by the state, then I could do that. If I wanted to create a crazy capitalist industrialist nation with everything privatized, then I could do that, and that's good. So we've got a work in progress of the ownership. So you've got merchants, privately owned, publicly traded, government run, and worker cooperatives. So merchant guilds is basically the precursor to the privately owned capitalist, I'm guessing. Privately owned are the capitalist, merchant guilds, I think that's a precursor to that. Publicly traded, that's interesting. So publicly traded means it's open to the general public. It's got to be the stock exchange. You've got to have stocks. Surely. That looks to me that there's going to be stocks. I really hope there is. There's going to be the stock market. Oh, the early beginnings of the stock market. That'd be a wild, wild west area to have. That'd be awesome. A government run, of course, that's owned by the government, and then worker cooperative. That's got to be some kind of socialist utopia. Anyway, production methods aren't limited to consuming and producing goods. Government administrations employ bureaucrats and clerks who use paper to produce bureaucracy. Okay, so it's used for the other stuff as well. So the production methods are used to produce bureaucracy by the looks of it in the government administration buildings. So the bureaucracy are the sort of capacities that we were talking about in previous dev diaries that you need to have in order to efficiently run your states. So by the looks of it, so one of the game's capacity side that lets you govern more people and extend more state service to them. So yeah, that's the bureaucracy capacity. Railways consume engines and fuel, such as coal, to produce both transportation and infrastructure. The former, which is sold on the market, and the latter, which allows the state to support more buildings without loss of market access. Universities employ academics that let the state guide research and development of new technologies and ideas. Virtually any kind of currency modifier or effect can be produced by production methods in buildings and can be applied in a variety of ways in the country, state, or even the building itself. So this paragraph is just basically implying that it's not limited to the production of goods and consumption of goods. It's also for a variety of different things, the administration, the infrastructure, and all that sort of stuff, which is cool. Basic government administration. I think this is an example of government administration and like production methods. So basic government administration consumes 10 paper and produces 50 bureaucracy at a fully staffed level, but each additional level beyond the first adds plus 2%. Through throughput bonus due to economy of scale. This increases both consumption of paper and output of bureaucracy, yielding more productivity from each of the pots that work in the building. Okay, so I think I'm guessing under. I mean, this is like the government administration building, but under that, I'm guessing this is the level. So for each level, it consumes 10 paper and produces 50 bureaucracy. I suspect. I mean, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I'm guessing. I'm honestly guessing that's the level, but I'm not entirely sure at all. So this has got 5, so it should be 50. It should be. Wait, what is? I'm getting lost here. I'm actually getting completely lost. It's getting slightly complicated. So 10 paper. So that should be. So this level 5, it should use 50 paper. Okay, and yeah, I'm pretty sure. And this is how it should work. I'm pretty sure it does work that way. I honestly don't know. Again, this is all getting fairly complicated indeed. What is all this here? We've got the production method type. So they must be using paper to write, I think, and that is getting out the bureaucracy. Again, I have absolutely no idea. I'm very, very excited to really dive into this in detail when it actually comes out, the game, and we can see what's going on. Because it does all look a little bit crazy in some areas and a little bit complicated, especially when I've never played Vicky before, so I have no idea. I'm not used to these screens. Anyway, this is, of course, adds a tremendous capacity for modding in new buildings and production methods, embassies that increase your influence, but which can also be configured to consume wine and meat at the state expense to increase the speed at which you improve relations. Oh, that's cool. That is cool. So you can increase your influence. So you can configure them. So maybe have another production method in there where you can get them to consume wine and meat produced at the other kind of produced at other industries, and you can use and that the embassies will consume them. And maybe it's to like throw some lavish and vast meals for other diplomatic representatives to increase relations quicker. Maybe shantytown temples that can only be built on coastlines that consume fish and create jobs for people qualifying for the deep one's profession, increasing state mortality, but also the weekly rate of global Shitterloo rising counter. We can't wait to see what madness you unleash. It looks like you can do some pretty crazy shit. Oh bugger, I just said the S word. Oh well. My bad. If tweaking multiple production methods across several categories on every single building in the game sounds a bit complex compared to linear building upgrades, you're right. Thankfully, we built a number of tools to help you with this process. Good, because by the looks of it, you can do each building, you can like kind of customize it and modify it with different production methods to have different things and different outcomes. And micromanaging that is going to be a goddamn nightmare. And it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of deal with the management side of things. But so thankfully, they built a number of tools to help with this process. So foremost among these are the buildings panel, where you get an overview of all of the buildings in your country organized by major and minor type. Good. For example, you could get an overview of all rural buildings, or all furniture manufacturers, or all ports. Okay, so specific building type, you get an overview of all of them within your nation, which is good. If you have buildings of the same type in several different states, you can break it down further to view the individual building. On each level, you can see how profitable the building is and adjust its production methods. You can even set all production methods for a certain building type to a specific setting across your country with one click. Good. So it's basically like a macro monitor kind of interface, I'm guessing, where you can like properly kind of manage it correctly, because just like doing it individually will be a nightmare. From the buildings panel, you can get a bird's eye view of all industries in your country and see at a glance how they're doing financially. You can change production methods on an individual building or on all of them at once. You can even expand buildings directly from the screen if you so choose, or click on one to get an in-depth view with balance sheet and workforce. So this is an example work in progress here of what we can do. So looks like this is so your buildings are divided into the categories, so urban, rural, and development. Okay, and we can see this is all of the urban buildings in the United States, so all of the food industry buildings, all of the textile mills, all of the furniture manufacturers, glassworks, and tooling workshops. Okay, so this is like all of them present in the United States, and the numbers. So you've got 21 of them food industries, 8 textile mills, 3 furniture manufacturers, 10 glassworks, and 7 tooling workshops. You can click, by the looks of it, we can actually click on each category and it opens up the subcategories. So here, for example, with the textile mills, if you've kind of clicked on it and it's scrolled down and got these 3 different subcategories, which show you the locations of the different textile mills within the United States of America as a whole. So we've got 2 in Louisiana, 4 in Massachusetts, and 2 in South Carolina. And for each kind of textile mill in each state, you can see the different production methods and who owns them. So, for example, here, I mean, what is this, a textile mill? I'm guessing this is going to be the weaving machine. Or that's the weaving machine there. Is this fully automated? I don't know. Maybe you can see something else. Maybe this is not making a certain specific type of clothing. You can see that it's not automated, so you don't have machines in there, and you can see who owns it. So this is privately owned. So basically, the 2 in Louisiana seem to be privately owned. The 4 in Massachusetts seem to be owned by the merchants, by the looks of it. So you can kind of click and break it all down, and you should then be able to change different production methods this way instead of individually finding a way and clicking on each building in each state and manually setting it. So this is good because it would present a logistical nightmare if this wasn't there, because you'll have, I mean, I don't want to even imagine what it's going to be like if this kind of macro interface was here. It would help us quite a lot. So that's cool. I'm guessing this is to set the wages? I don't know. Plus, I mean, does that increase the wages? I have no idea. But that's good. I like it that they have this, so you can easily see where your buildings are, what types they are, and you can change accordingly depending on what you want without having to click individually, which is good. Anyway, to minimize the requirement for mental math, thank God for that, because we all know that my math is crap. We've also created prediction tools that give you a breakdown of what to expect from choosing a certain production method based on profitability predictions, taking adjusted production and consumption into account, and summarizing which new job positions will be created and which will disappear. That's good. So I'm guessing when you just hover your mouse cursor over like the different change you want to do, it's going to tell you how many pops you're going to need to work like such production method and how many you would lose. For example, I'd know, let's say I've used automation on the glassworks, I'm going to have an increase of like such amount of machinists but lose a certain amount of non-qualified people. Maybe it'll probably tell me how much my production increase will go up or down, how much money I'll make up or down and stuff. So it's going to help us quite a lot. And I think this is going to be absolutely vital, especially for people who are new to Victoria in general, and even maybe just new to Paradox games in general. It's going to help them a lot. And the quality of life is going to be just absolutely vital to help everybody who's really not accustomed to Paradox games, and I think that is a fantastic thing to have. Where was I? While it may on the surface seem obvious to just enable the production methods and make the buildings more profitable, keep in mind the societal effects as well. Are there enough pops in the state that qualify for the more advanced jobs this new process requires? Will the wage for these new jobs be sufficient to entice the pops to switch professions? Will you inadvertently create a whole new class of well-to-do machinists who have pro-labour union sentiments? Or will the increased profits not lead to higher wages in the building because they're already competitive and fully employed, which will simply result in more dividends for the shareholders, which will be funneled into increased luxury consumption? Which you choose might depend on your population social mobility, what politics you favour in your country, a socialist uprising may not be in your plans, and whether you are able to supply luxuries yourself without benefiting your rival. More profitable domestic industries are never bad, but should be far from the only consideration when building in your society. Again, this confirms what was said earlier on, and this is good. It's the good side, the downside. Kind of need to pay attention and choose what you want to have depending on what you need. And this is just kind of, instead of click a button and get an instant bonus or only instant bonuses, it has profound societal change. And that is what's good, because Victoria 3 seems to be primarily a society simulator, an economic society simulator. Society is important. Of course, having these different building productions and different kind of things, it's going to change the way your society works, and the game should be able to reflect that. And it seems to be the approach they're taking, and I like that. Predictive tooltips will explain the anticipated impact on the building's balance as a result of changes in production, consumption, and wage requirements, as well as the changes in employment that could also impact the country's politics over time. You'll also be forewarned if there aren't enough qualifying pops to take on any new professions created, as this could limit your industry's effectiveness. So here we've got an example, I think. So luxury production. So what's this? Is this prioritizing non-luxury clothing or craftsman sewing? Or elastic? So basically choosing one of, this is like a luxury production method, and you have like 3 subcategories in it, I'm guessing. And it says if I wanted to go for craftsman sewing, so change luxury production method to craftsman sewing, because at the moment it should be on prioritized non-luxury clothing. If I were to change it to craftsman sewing, this is what would happen. There would be not enough qualifications to fully staff this building, so we wouldn't have enough pops to staff it. However, it does say the projected impact on balance would be plus £71.8, but even though it's not fully staffed, would still make more money, because of course it's making a luxury item. And of course, again, this comes down to the fact that, of course, here we're not, the first thing they're on here before changing this is on prioritised non-luxury clothing. Of course, if we prioritise craftsman sewing, which is a luxury production, then it's going to be at the detriment of non-luxury clothing. So your poorer pops, they're going to have less clothes to choose from and less clothes to buy. And of course, this is going to impact the market. Of course, there's going to be less clothes in production, more people wanting to buy these clothes, you're not going to have enough, which drives the prices up of non-luxury clothing. So these basic pops are going to be angry, they're not going to be satisfied, not going to fulfill their needs, and they're going to be angry with you. And it's honestly, it sounds really, really cool. What do you say? Good production, clothes, -20. So there you go. So it produces -20% general clothes, or -20 general clothes, but produce plus 40 luxury clothes. And you can see what it's going to consume. It's going to consume 20 silk to make these luxury clothes. It increases the employment of shopkeepers by 400, so you're going to have more kind of qualified shopkeepers, and decrease like low-level labourers. And you can basically see the changes it's going to make. So that's good, and that is super helpful, and I really, really like this. I really do. But anyway, that's all for this week. We'll return discussing more economic intricacies later. But for the next little while, we'll be exploring domestic politics. Oh, yes, I like the sound of that. Starting next week when Martin will be presenting interest groups. Yes, thank you. I like that so much. Interest groups. I've heard a lot about interest groups. We don't know too much about them. We've seen a couple of like screenshots with the PDXCon, like interest groups and stuff, but we don't know much about them. And I'm already super looking forward to next Thursday. It's like, honestly, when you read a dev diary, you kind of go, yay, dev diary time. You get all like a warm and fuzzy feeling inside. And you get really excited and kind of go through it. And then when you get to the end, you go, oh no, it's finished. I've got to wait another week. And then the impatient waiting commences again. It's a never-ending cycle of permanent torture, where you're just constantly waiting to get these updates, which are super cool, and get like more info. And then it finishes as soon as it began, and then you go, oh, I've got to wait a month again. But it's like, yeah, I am super liking it. I'm really enjoying going through these dev dives with you guys. I really am, because it's just, I'm learning as much as I can as I go along, and it's definitely going to help me when the game launches. I have to say, going through this is going to make it a lot more familiar. But I hope you guys are enjoying this as well. I hope you enjoyed going through this with me. And of course, I really appreciate your comments as well, who are like kind of explaining things that I don't know. Because of course, I'm talking about stuff here, and I don't exactly know everything, and I'm not sure on everything. And you guys have been clearing up a lot of stuff with the comments, explaining what different things are, and based on your experience with Vicky 2. Because a lot of you guys have more experience with, well, have experience with Vicky 2 that I don't. And of course, we bring in this over into the videos, into the comments, and it just helps me with my understanding of the game and help me understand these dev diaries more. So thank you so much indeed. But again, of course, if you enjoyed this, then please don't hesitate to smash that like button. And if you want to see more videos just like this, then please do consider hitting that subscribe button so you will never miss a video. And with all that said and done, thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you all next Thursday for the next dev diary on Interest Group. Bye for now.